blue cities are out of control, promising more, spending more, delivering less, and pushing off the fiscal problems to some future day.
I was watching one of your recent videos of you saying that you never told a lie. So you raised property taxes when you promised you wouldn't. You promised that crime would go down when it's not.
You know, Mamdani, you a piece of shit. You didn't even mention that black girl, that black woman that was found in a garbage bag. You didn't even have the respect to make a statement about that black girl's body chopped up in a garbage bag. But if she was a white woman, you would have made a statement.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today?
So this video was a huge surprise. This is from CNN, not Fox News or, one of those other conservative platforms. CNN. The host by the name of Fareed Zakaria, he's been on the network for quite a while. He's been there forever, doing, weekend programming. This man is a card-carrying member of the establishment press, just called out the mayor of New York City and the entire Blue City playbook on live television. Very fascinating. Let's get into it.
Here's my take. Zohran Mamdani ran on a promise to make New York affordable.
A mandate for a city we can afford.
Last week, he unveiled a budget that is, in a word, unaffordable. New York has been fiscally profligate for so long that the headline number, $127 billion, produces little shock. But for perspective, these are similar to the annual expenditures of a mid-sized nation with all the expenses a country requires, like Greece or Thailand, devoted to governing one city. New York City's budget has ballooned in recent years. Michael Bloomberg's last budget, adopted for fiscal year 2014, totaled about $70 billion. So in little more than a decade, the budget has nearly doubled, growing faster than inflation and faster than the city's economic growth.
Time is flying by, but I do remember Bloomberg, and apparently his last budget was $70 billion, and obviously Mamdani comes in with $127 billion for one city. Yes, it's one of the most powerful cities in the world, but $127 billion? That's the problem. Fareed points out, since this host does a lot of international news stories, he points out by comparing this to running a mid-sized country like Greece or Thailand. We're talking about funding the entire nation's wealth of government for 5 boroughs. I'm from Brooklyn, I live here, so this is not an abstract situation for me. And when you see what $127 billion is supposed to be buying, I'm confused here because a lot of small businesses have closed down. Restaurants, bars did not survive COVID. Longtime residents have left. And the response from City Hall every single time is not like, let's figure out what we're doing wrong. It's, we need more money. See, that's the problem. We just need more money. This is not just a New York City problem. This is a pattern talking about Mayor Brandon Johnson, which we talked about a lot on this channel. He walked in Chicago with a budget deficit and somehow it just continues to spend. He wants to expand spending.
I was watching one of your recent videos of you saying that you never told a lie. So you raised property taxes when you promised you wouldn't. You promised that crime would go down when it's not. Reports of crime is down though, but not crime within itself. I just want to let everybody know that crime itself is not down. Nobody voted for you to fund illegal migrants, Brandon Johnson. And we know this is happening because Melissa Hortman, a Democrat in Minnesota, voted against funding for illegal migrants. The only Democrat, by the way, and she was murdered for it. She was murdered actually by someone who was appointed by Tim Walz, sir. So I just want you guys to think about that as well. So we know this is happening, which is the main reason why the president is withholding federal funds in Chicago, because he is afraid that you will fund illegal migrants. And honestly, I'm afraid that you will do that too. How are you going to allow 9 janitors to be fired when you have 150 police detail and that costs you $22 million a year? You can't cut a few cops to save a few jobs? You mean to tell me your safety is that important, Brandon Johnson? Absolutely disgraceful. Instead, you want to hang out with a China-loving, dog-shocking communist like Hassan Piker. Why are you streaming, dude? People are out here dying. I'm serious. You was just on 79th, right? You saw 24 shots get let off. People are dying out here. You don't got time to stream. Do you understand that? And I'm being serious, dude. Absolutely disgraceful. You want to defund the police and your executive order means nothing. You cannot hold federal agents accountable, bro. It's called supremacy clause. That means federal law is the highest law of the land. How many people have to die because of your poor leadership? Watchdogs has recently found that we are actually $41.1 billion of debt. It's not even 1.5. So where is all the money going, Mr. Brandon Johnson? We want to know that, but we are all the same in the eyes of God, Brandon Johnson. Stop being racist. It doesn't look good for you. Okay?
Karen Bass is running LA with a $13 billion budget while parts of the city is literally burned down last year. And obviously we're talking literally because of the wildfires, the budget, the failures, all of it happening simultaneously. These mayors may suck, but they're not outliers. They're running the same play from the same playbook and getting the same results. We need more spending. And the more spending we have, the worse the outcome is. And when they act surprised when the people start asking some questions, I mean, think about it. The reason why Zohran Mamdani won is because he ran on affordability. That was his whole thing. A mandate for a city that we can't afford. Those are his words. So when he drops $127 billion, people are a little upset, especially when it comes to trying to raise property taxes on the middle class, trying to use the residents as a bargaining chip, a hostage situation, to try to convince the governor to raise the tax on the wealthy.
Raising taxes is definitely going to have an effect on my rent.
Every campaign speech and every debate where you engage, we opened our ears to listen. Now today, accept the words echoing from us now. Do your job as mayor and leave our taxes.
Because when you talk about raising property taxes, you're talking about the foundation of homeownership in this city.
I was at the budget briefing with him, and I made it very clear, I didn't bite my tongue on this, that this is a non-starter.
Mayor Zohran Mamdani, you are out your goddamn mind.
We are back talking about my mayor, and people are mad.
Mayor Mamdani, he ran on a platform where he wanted to make New York more affordable. He wanted to remember the forgotten New Yorker. You're saying, hey, this ultimatum here, this could disproportionately hurt Black and brown communities. Has he received that message? What has his response been to that, if he has?
Well, I've spoken to him. I spoke to him yesterday. I was at the budget briefing with him, and I made it very clear, I didn't bite my tongue on this, that this is a non-starter. And I think you're starting to hear a lot of the political class, whether you're Republican, conservative, progressive, who are saying, no. We cannot absorb this amount of it.
And if the governor doesn't bite and do what he says, well, then the middle class suffers by raising the property taxes near 10%. I mean, come on here.
And much of it has happened as the city has been losing the one thing that makes big government easier to finance: people. New York City's population fell sharply amid the pandemic, with a 5% decline from April 2020 to July 2022. More recent city reports show a rebound, but the city remained below its 2020 baseline as of 2024. The arithmetic is brutal. A larger bill is divided among fewer payers. Per person, the imbalance is stark. Using the Lincoln Institute's fiscally standardized numbers, New York's general spending in 2023 was more than 30% higher per capita than Los Angeles, and more than double Houston.
These are some fascinating numbers. New York is spending more than 30% more per person than LA, and double what Houston spends. Double. That's why people are leaving. I mean, I have really good friends who left to go to Houston. They're not arriving here, they're leaving. So we got a bigger bill and a shrinking number of people to split it with. Well, some of the math is not gonna work. Over 50,000 people in Chicago moved from 2020 to 2023. That's basically people are telling you, voting with their feet by saying, you know what, I'm getting out of here. In Los Angeles, people are leaving too. More people are leaving than coming in for years straight. And obviously we all know about New York. They dropped 5% during the pandemic and still hasn't recovered as of 2024. These are consensus numbers. This is not opinion. This is not talking points. This is people leaving. And meanwhile, Houston, which spends half of what New York spends per person, people are moving there. Texas added 400,000 people in 2023 alone. And I'm not here to wave a Texas flag. I heard it's really, really hot there in some places. I don't know if I want to melt. May consider it, but I don't know. No. But the point is that people are making rational decisions. They're looking at what cities cost, what they get back in return, and they're choosing accordingly. And the cities that get chosen are not the ones with the $127 billion budget. Brandon Johnson in Chicago tried to push a real estate transfer tax increase. Obviously, the people weren't buying it. Karen Bass keeps expanding city payroll while the residents leave. And none of these mayors, not one, is publicly asking the most obvious question. If the people are leaving, then why are we making it more expensive to stay here?
And what do New Yorkers get for this? Look at New York City schools, the largest school district in the country. The city's education budget has climbed while enrollment has shrunk. The DOE budget has risen from roughly $34 billion in 2019 to over $40 billion, while the DOE says per student spending is projected to reach nearly $35,000 in fiscal year 2026, among the highest in the nation. The outputs, graduation numbers, test scores, and reading levels are at best middling, often comparable to places that spend a fraction of what New York does.
Now we're talking about book learning for the young people, the youth of America. $35,000 per person per year. Let that sink in for a second. You can compare that to tuition in a lot of universities in this country. And what are we getting out of this? Are the kids doing well? No. About half of New York City students met grade level English standards in 2023 with a $40 billion education budget that grew from $34 billion in just a few years. Enrollment is going down. Spending is going up. Outcomes are basically flatlined. That's not a budget. Someone's getting paid here and we don't know who because the students are not benefiting. This is a really bad magic trick where the money disappears and nothing improves. This is the exact same pattern playing out in every single city run on this model. Talking about Los Angeles and the homelessness problem. When it comes to homelessness, they have a budget that's approaching $1 billion a year, but homelessness went up 10% in the city and 9% countywide in 2023 with their own numbers. Brandon Johnson inherited the Chicago public schools with a $500 million budget deficit, and the response wasn't restructuring, it was just, hey, give us more money. Again, same play, different city. And the problem is no one gets fired, no one gets audited in any kind of meaningful way. The Department of Education budget jumps to $6 billion and no one can point out what changed for the better. And the problem is the kids that are absorbing the worst possible outcomes are coming from Black and Latino kids in low-income neighborhoods. These are the communities where these mayors stand in front of in every election saying that we're trying to fight for you. The problem is the gap between that speech and what's going on in the spreadsheet, it's a problem. It's a scandal. It doesn't look like one because it happens very slowly, line item by line item, year by year. Someone's getting paid. Someone is doing very well. And unfortunately, it's not the people who live in these communities.
Now come the taxes, because every political argument in New York eventually ends up at the same curbside. Who will pay? New York already sits at the extreme end of the American tax spectrum. For high earners, the combined state plus city income tax reaches 14.776%. Add federal taxes and the combined marginal rate can exceed 50%, reaching roughly 55% on certain investment income. New Yorkers pay tax rates comparable to European countries that provide in return universal health care, free college education, and amazing infrastructure. New Yorkers get some 300 miles of sidewalk sheds. On business taxation, the city is also off the charts. The Citizens Budget Commission reports that New York City business activity faces the country's highest combined corporate tax rate, 17.44%, once state, city, and regional layers are stacked. Mamdani wants to hike income and corporate rates even further, or else he says he will raise property taxes by almost 10%.
If you've been following New York news, you know that Mamdani came with an ultimatum. Option A is higher taxes. Option B, higher corporate taxes. Option C, a 10% property hike. That's it. Those are your options. There is no option D where we look at this $127 billion budget and ask what is not working and cut it. That conversation is not happening, and that tells you everything that was going on here. And we get into a point where us New Yorkers, we're paying European tax rates. That's 55%, and European countries at that rate will give you universal health care, free college, a functional train system. New York gives you 300 miles of scaffolding that have been up since the time I've been born. So that's the trade. That's the deal. where is this money going to? Combined with the corporate tax rate, that's 17.44%. That's the highest in the country. Our mayor, Mamdani, wants to raise it. Amazon left Queens. They were going to build in Queens in 2019, partly because of the political and tax environment there. And that was before these new proposals. You raise the cost of doing business past a certain point, and businesses are not going to negotiate. They're just going to leave. Then the tax base shrinks, then the budget has a hole, and they're going to have to raise taxes to fill the hole. And then more businesses leave. That's the cycle, and we're in it right now. Chicago is running through the same loop right now. Karen Bass is doing the same thing in Los Angeles. Eric Adams tried to spend his way through it and ended up being indicted. De Blasio was terrible. He expanded everything, burned through all the reserves, left the mess for the next person, and now Mamdani is picking up the baton and he wants more money. How is the answer still more of the same? It doesn't make any sense.
Take Los Angeles, another one-party metropolis wrestling with affordability and disorder. The city's homelessness budget for fiscal year 2025-26 totals about $950 million. The LA Homelessness Services Authority reported that in 2023, homelessness was up 9% countywide and 10% in the city. And a 2024 AP account noted that homelessness has surged 70% countywide since 2015 and 80% in the city. All this amid public frustration despite billions spent. An audit reviewed $2.4 billion in city homelessness funding and found that officials could not reliably track where it went or what it achieved. Or take Chicago, with a mayor whose approval rating is deep underwater, where the pension promises are so large that they will surely bankrupt the city at some point. What is the theory of good government here? If the answer is keep adding programs, the city will keep producing unaffordability, because unaffordability is what happens when government becomes a machine that grows faster than the society it governs.
LA and homelessness audit, and this is completely wild. They reviewed $2.4 billion in funding and found, and I really need you to hear this, officials could not reliably track where it went. They could not track it. $2.4 billion gone into the budget, into the system, and nobody can tell you what it brought or whether it worked. That's corruption. It's not incompetence. It's not a clerical error. It's corruption. Taxpayer money is being stolen, and no one is there to fight for the taxpayer. And then looking at the rental assistant numbers, $263 million to $1.3 billion, 5 times increase, a few years, and the rents went up anyway. Because here's the thing, you cannot subsidize your way out of a supply problem. You put more money into a market without adding the supply, and landlords price to wherever the ceiling is. The city's gonna pay? Great. Now the ceiling is higher. That's basic economics. This is not that hard to understand.
Stop governing as if the goal is to announce new entitlements, and instead make government work. Safer streets, functioning schools, predictable sanitation, and above all, enough housing that the middle class can find places to live. New York City does not need more soaring rhetoric. It needs more homes.
Building real housing, market rate, abundant, fast, doesn't give any of these mayors a ribbon cutting on a new government program. It doesn't grow the agency's payroll. It doesn't create a new director position for a political ally, so it doesn't get done. Karen Bass declared a housing emergency in 2023, had the press conference, executive orders, and homelessness is still up dramatically from pre-pandemic levels. Brandon Johnson in Chicago is pushing for tenant protections while there's still less apartments. There's still apartment shrinkage situation and is not getting addressed. The math isn't working. The outcomes don't match the spending. And the real people, working class families, the families in the outer boroughs, the people who are just trying to stay in the city that they were born in are paying for it. I don't see any change because they're gonna keep voting the same people in. I think when CNN starts saying that blue city mayors are running their cities into the ground, that's the writing on the wall. But I do appreciate him saying something different from what everyone else is saying. But drop your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you live in New York, California, or Chicago, and you living this every single day. Let me know how you feel. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.